Good afternoon and welcome. This is a public forum for the 18th of April 2023. I remind all people attending this meeting that it is being webcast on YouTube with audio and vision. A recording of the meeting is available on the internet and is required to be available for 12 months. Private recordings, including taking photographs by members of the public gallery, are not allowed. This ruling is to maintain the integrity of the meeting's proceedings. You're not taking a photograph, are you, Mr. Haller? Please ensure all devices, like mobile phones, are on silent mode. On behalf of Council, I welcome all people in the public gallery and observing live on the internet to this public forum. I now call for any conflict of interest declarations from councillors or staff.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have declared a conflict of interest for item 12.2 as it relates to my performance review, and it's a significant pecuniary interest, and I'll leave the chamber while that matter is being discussed.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Are there any other declarations? Right, attending the public forum today are councillors Scott Butterfield, Councillor Simon Ferguson, Councillor Anthony Patterson and Deputy Mayor, Councillor Kenny Ring, Councillor Dean Saul, Councillor Kerry Riddington and Councillor Alexandra Wyatt. Online we have Councillor Arthur Bain. Council staff in attendance are Mr. Craig Milburn, General Manager, Mr. Michael Jackson, Director of Operations and Planning, Mr. Steve Mitchell, Director Corporate and Commercial, Mr. Daniel Thorogood, Manager Governance and Information Services. I would now ask the General Manager, Mr. Craig Milburn, to outline the guidelines for this public forum, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. From our code of meeting practice, the Speaker is given 5 minutes to address Council. This time is strictly enforced by the Chairperson. Speakers must not digress from the item on the agenda. If they do digress to irrelevant matters, the Chairperson may direct them to speak back on the subject. If they fail to observe that, the Speaker will ask them to be seated. A councillor, through the Chairperson, may ask questions of the Speaker following their address. Questions put to the Speaker must be direct, succinct and without argument. Speakers are under no obligation to actually answer those questions. If they choose to, they have 1 minute in which to answer them. Speakers at public forums cannot ask questions of the Council, councillors or Council staff. When addressing the Council, speakers at the public forum must comply with this code and other relevant codes of Council. They must refrain from engaging in disorderly conduct, publicly alleging breaches of the Code of Conduct or making potentially defamatory statements. If the Chairperson considers that the Speaker has engaged in conduct of that type, the Chairperson may request the person to refrain from inappropriate behaviour and to withdraw and unreservedly apologise for any inappropriate comments. Where the Speaker fails to comply at the Chairperson's request, the Chairperson may immediately require the person to sit down. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. We have one speaker today. I remind the Speaker you are presenting information which may benefit councillors in becoming better informed on particular decisions they have to make at the council meeting tomorrow. You may not ask questions. Our speaker today is Mr. Paul Haler, speaking against item 10.4, Delegated Authority to Waive Commercial Licence Fees. I thank you for being here today, Mr. Haler, and you have 5 minutes. And have fun turning the microphone on.
Are we all right?
You're right. Thank you.
Amazing. Okay. Well, thank you for the opportunity to present to you today regarding 10.4, Delegated Authority to Waive Commercial Licence Fees, which appears in this month's business paper. My purpose is to request an extension of this arrangement to similar businesses. To do this, I first have to separate the three key issues, and these are: 1, licences for commercial activities or a business; 2, the Indigenous enterprises or cultural activities, and 3, the minimal or infrequent land use. It is then fair to look at Council's focus areas on community and economy, both of which appear in the operating report. The purpose of the focus is to anticipate the outcomes the community expects. 1. Focus area for community, delivery program actions. Amongst many, these are key actions. Work with Indigenous communities and organisations to promote inclusion and connection through cultural opportunities and events. 2. Partner with others to support and promote community events, education and entertainment opportunities. Partner with others to support and develop our community. And lastly, support an active community. The focus area on economy, or the delivery actions, work with business and community to build economic and employment capacity. Work with business and community to build economic and employment capacity. This breaks down the actual need for business to be supported and for Aboriginal culture's business to be supported. In fact, business is business. However, Aboriginal cultural activities are unique and a complete tourist attraction on their own. They can be a knowledgeable journey for some and almost spiritual in nature for others. The General Manager's discretion or delegation on these issues, well, I've always been unsettled when I hear a great number of people in our community declare that the council are corrupt or the GM is on the take. Well, if he's going to get a licence, obviously he's doing something. If he's not on a licence, the General Manager doesn't win. But he knows that. The GM is on the take. Of course, they are nuts, and they critique narrative and the direction to achieve an outcome. It is therefore, in my thinking, an opportunity to eliminate this narrative in a small way from the community. With respect to all, I would see this as a way forward. Licence fees be reviewed as business specific, no race, no gender, no crap, and actual use of council land. And 2, that Aboriginal cultural opportunities be cultural specific, and that where an opportunity is identified, 2 things happen. 1, the opportunity is moved into qualification for licence exemption or discount, if it's deemed to be a business thing. The cultural opportunity be assessed and guided through a small introduction to small business essentials. So rather than a sort of take and give of money or whatever, we actually encourage an introduction to small business essentials like cash flow and things like that. The issue that raises, I think, was the stand-up paddleboard scenario at Southwest Rocks. The irony of all that is SUP is an Hawaiian Indigenous activity, not culturally Australian. It is, however, a business and should be assessed under the equal conditions. So therefore, if you're looking at that business, you'd say, well, it's not an Australian cultural business, it's not an Aboriginal cultural business, it's actually a business. So you would assess that under whether they could get a discount or not. So, because it's Hawaiian, it's not Indigenous SUP. Yep. Why are there annual licence fees for an activity that lasts at the most for 6 months of the year and is carried out in most instances? 1 minute ago?
30 seconds.
Jesus. In most instances, in the ocean with council have no jurisdiction. That's what I'm talking about, the surfing ones. Finally, I would like to see the enthusiasm for small to medium enterprise businesses and cultural uniqueness to be placed on different assessment processes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haler. We now have an opportunity. If anyone has a question on what was just presented to you by Mr. Haler, you can ask a question. Any councillor? Councillor Patterson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Haler, for presentation today. Can I start off by asking you today, Mr. Haler, are you representing Mr. Haler, or are you representing your advertising business or the YAC?
Press your button.
Press your button.
No, they're stupid people that own the Act. I'm representing myself and the surf operator out at Present Head.
No, thank you. Do you think a business is helped by having them not pay a fee rather than giving them business advice like what's an ABN, what's your insurance like, what's your payroll, do you have wages, have you got all your insurances in place, have you got your qualifications, you know? Do you think that we need to be giving fee-free businesses a kick by giving them no charge in the licence fees by doing that, or are we better off helping them how to run or start a business? Because many businesses fail, as you know. Question.
I had a business that failed. I lasted 2 years. It was home insulation, manufacturing and distribution. If I'd have had that sort of advice, I was 30 at the time, I wouldn't have lost my house. And I also look at this as when John Howard gave out the grant, you know, he gave out, if you had a baby, you got $3,000, and all of a sudden there was more colour TV sets bought and 48-inch U beauties than there were babies, I think. But then, anyway, I think the problem with cash with anybody is that the temptation's too much to probably not use it wisely, or it's not teaching you anything. And I think...
Point of order.
Yes,
I think
point
that's
of
it.
What's your point of order, please, Councillor Ring?
Like racial or like stereotypical discrimination. I don't know. He's being discriminatory. He's making like generalizations about people that might get money and then use it unlawfully.
Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Harler, could you restrict your comments directly to the question, please?
Business.
In general, I'd say that a lot of people would, myself included, would probably use that money not in the right way it's intended to do, but I'd definitely benefit from education on what I was about to go into.
Thank you, Mr. Harler.
Do
you have another question? Can we come back to you, Councillor Patterson? Councillor Riddington had a light on. Thank you, Councillor Riddington.
Thank you, Mr. Haler. I appreciate your presentation. Mr. Haler, are you aware that the council voted in the majority to approve the fig tree stand-up paddleboard thing?
No, I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, well, we did. We did that last year. So that to me is a completely separate issue.
Yeah.
This is a report that's come to council, and really it's about, are you aware that it's about the delegation authorities of the general manager?
Yeah, well, my lead up, and the reason I finished with that was about the delegation of the general manager and the fact that where there's an ounce of room for somebody to say, council haven't done the right thing here, they'll take it to improve their narrative. So if a delegation is left up to the general manager, it's a good way for the general manager and thereby the council, or I might be generalising, but thereby the council not being treated fairly, because, anything that's, I think it should be that or that is never right. So if it was a little bit more red and white, then you wouldn't have that confusion.
So another question, if I may. So would you be thinking that it was more beneficial to have it case-by-case basis come to council, like we analysed the fig tree request back, I think it was October, please correct me if I'm wrong. I personally would think that's beneficial. I'd like to know what you think on a case-by-case basis and not necessarily the general manager's delegation.
Well, yeah, I mean, the council's focus is on economy and community and whatever else I mentioned there that I can't get back to papers quick enough. It depends, and I mean, I take lead from anybody on this, that it all depends on the time spent on it. I mean, if you've got to allocate a human in council for a year just to allocate licenses like that. It could be, not a very sound financial decision. But if you have in place, it comes through the funnel, okay, it goes this way or it goes that way. There's only two decisions to be made. And it can be almost done by anybody. Everybody knows about it and you know how it's qualified for. So the answer is yes, actually. Okay.
Councillor Patterson, do you have a final question?
And I'll come in last.
I didn't see you.
No,
So I apologise to you,
Council, so I have a number of questions, so I don't mind. It's up to you.
Councillor Patterson, you might answer my question, perhaps. If you
Oh, that's true.
So right, we'll have a Councillor Patterson. I interrupted him because with the light on. Didn't see your light on. I apologise.
I've got
Councillor
about
Patterson.
3 or 4 questions, depending on the answer.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Patterson.
I'm a business owner, Mr. Halia. Why shouldn't you think I get a free licence? I'm a business owner. I have to declare interest of that too, by the way.
Well, you don't get a licence. You just get a licence to kill with your glove.
Point order.
No,
We just have a straight,
Sorry,
clear answer,
that's
please.
just being a bit light-hearted there, Mr.
I'd like relief from council fees and charges, but why can't I do that, Mr. Halia?
Yeah. Well, true, but that's true.
Another question.
Do you think, this is a question to you, do you think this is a business thing that we're trying to do to support, or is it just something that we're trying to make people feel comfy in their seats, that we're so-called helping business by not letting them pay a licence fee?
Well, okay. Well, I think it's condescending to say, he's a Bob, go away, you'll be right, mate. I think, and I think there are two issues. There is everything's a business. Once you get out there on the beach, or you have to get a license to do something like drive a car. You've got to do something for that, and you got to usually pay for it. I'm not saying in this instance that anyone should pay for it. A business is a business, and what the council are trying to promote is cultural tourism. I think Mr. Baines mentioned that on a few occasions.
Order. It's Councillor Bain. Councillor Bain. It's not Mr. Bain. He's a councillor.
Oh, sorry. Oh, jeez. Right. Councillor Bain. Councillor Bain has mentioned cultural tourism, and I think this is an excellent way to really focus on that. You're focusing on cultural tourism, which is Aboriginal culture, not Hawaiian culture.
Councillor Patterson, please.
Do you realise, Mr. Halia, that I've been called racist because I've asked questions of this nature?
Order. Councillor Patterson, that's not relevant to the topic in front of us, please.
More questions relevant to the topic?
I'm happy to answer it, though. Don't have to.
Delegated authority, Mr. Halia, do you think it's a good idea that us as a elected representative of the community should delegate the responsibilities of taking people's licence fee charges away and not issuing them to the general manager when we don't even know the criteria, Mr. Halia? Do they have to supply a ABN number? Do they have to have insurance? Do they have to have a business name? Do they have to have...
In actual fact, the way it works is they've got to have a licence to get their insurance, which is really asked about too. So, I hear where you're coming from with that. But the general manager really delegates everything. You guys decide here, I think, doesn't he? Like you direct the ship and you give please correct me if I'm wrong. You guys make the major decisions, and then the general manager and council make sure they make a profit or a loss and implement those measures. So, but it's a healthy debate between council and councillors about improving and focusing more on what is being promised, which is a focus on the economy, focus on the community, focus on Indigenous culture, and also focusing on business. You see, business doesn't have colour.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. We have another question for you from Councillor Sewell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Haler, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. I've made a few notes. Mr. Haler, do you have any examples of a similar situation regarding council licence fees? And you mentioned earlier about stand-up paddle schools or surf schools in our valley. That's question one.
Yeah, well, I do. I've got two examples. One, and they're two different business models, right? You've got Steve out there at the point who pays about $1,100 a year for licences and applying for the licence, some other bloody fee, And then once he's got that, he can pay his insurance. Once he pays his insurance, he can then show that to whoever wants to selling boards cheap or whatever. But he's got the overhead. He's got that before he even gets out of bed. He's got that overhead. Then he's got to get his boards, and then he's got to rely on tourism to make a dollar. And for him to do, he'd probably have to do something in the vicinity of 20 lessons, if not more, for free to pay for the licence fee. So automatically somebody that comes onto the beach and doesn't have to pay the licence fee is 20 lessons in front of him for full revenue. So...
Thank you. Councillor Ring, do you have a question? No, you don't? Are there any further questions?
Yeah, I do.
Councillor Wyatt, thank you.
I just wanted to clarify. So the recommendation that is put to us to vote on tomorrow is that council gives public notice in accordance with section 610 and 610E and F of the Local Government Act of its intention to waive a payment of or reduce fees for the commercial licences on land owned by council, Indigenous enterprises and minimal land, those three that you mentioned. And then further down, it says that council may choose to waive. So you've spoken opposing that. So what would you recommend that we vote? What would you put as an alternative to that recommendation?
Microphone. Thank you, Mr. Haller. Thank you.
Turned into one of these two-way things. Well, my recommendation would be is that any business that requires a licence is assessed on that value. And I'd like to say it's waived for all businesses, especially startups, and that the purely cultural businesses be assessed on what we can do above giving a free licence, which to me would be help the others as well. But I'm trying to do as much here. I would then get some advice from somebody that's willing to give them a day course or a half a day course on, do you know about cash flow? Do you know you have to have this? Do you know after that? So they can actually go, well, hang on, this cultural thing that I want to start, geez, we're going to need thousands of dollars. I thought I could just go out there and get money and it'll all go you beaut. So, and I think that's more value.
Thank you, Mr. Haler. Another question, Councillor Wyatt, and then I'm coming to Councillor Ring.
So just to summarise, clarify that, you're suggesting that your proposal is that every licence application be assessed individually on its merits using some type of criteria, and that council approves that or is still delegated?
Well, it's not in the motion.
Well,
I guess that's
you can delegate it to the general manager. At least the general manager's got a clear instruction. Because if somebody came to me as general manager and said, well, it's up to you, buddy, I'd go, thanks very much. I'm going to live next door to somebody who's going to say, how come you gave him a licence but not him a licence?
Thank you, Mr. Haler. Councillor Ring.
I just want to clarify that you just said you would extend the fee waiver for all businesses, but for the cultural ones, you would give them a fee waiver and then you would like to educate them on what they would need for their business further than everybody else.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying waive their fee. Oh. I'm saying that we're trying to help cultural businesses, right? So I'm saying yes. For nothing, they turn up for a half-day workshop or a full-day workshop, perhaps in the CUC, and if they know what small business is all about, they needn't turn up. But if they want to learn, and they want to learn that they don't go broke in the first 2 weeks, and when I say they, I mean Australian Aboriginals, then well, is that the right pronoun? What I mean is that they are then taught some real tools in how to run a business. Then they go into the business pool, and if they go into the business pool, then it's either yes or no. It's probably no, because you know it's going to be a business that survives, and not going to be suffer the embarrassment or the failure.
Thank you, Mr. Haler. Did you have a follow-up question, Councillor Ring?
So why do we make this assumption? Why are you making an assumption that Indigenous businesses know differently to other businesses?
Yeah, well, thanks for that question. Because there are not very many cultural businesses in the valley. When was the last, I don't know, Indigenous corroboree or Dungutty special thing done in a tourist park or something that has been successful? I worked for 3 years in the visitor centre. I got asked 3 times, is there anything here that we can do, go and see that's Aboriginal? I said, well, it's the arts centre right there. The other one was the walk that they had through the park in Kempsey there. Every time we rang up, the poor guy was crook or couldn't make it. And then I mentioned to my partner in the visitor centre, what about the meeting place at the end of Crescent Head Beach up opposite Richardson's Crossing? And they said, well, we don't like to talk about that because people could go up there and desecrate it. So is it a business? That's the question I ask. If I can't ask you.
Thank you, Mr. Haler. Councillor, no. Councillor Patterson, another question.
Yeah, I got plenty of them. Mr. Harley, would you support a council that applied for a business training grant application to the state and federal government to help support Aboriginal cultural tourism in the Kempsey Shire?
Yes,
would you support that?
Yeah, absolutely. Cultural tourism, but define cultural tourism, That's the defining thing. That's the difference between the businesses everyone probably has here compared to culture, because what's our culture? Drinking VB out of a can. Their culture is totally different than ours. Just to put it bluntly, I don't really mean that
Thank you.
disrespectfully.
There are no further questions, Mr. Haler. I thank you for your attendance and your presentation today.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's the end of the public forum. We now have the break, and then we'll come back for the briefing. Thank you.
It's gone off here.